Well, in the 70s, there was nothing like coaching. If you really genuinely like helping people, supporting people, helping them overcome challenges, obstacles, even blocks, then you might explore coaching. But if it's just about the money, go into politics probably. What's interesting about it is that they don't show up with a show me attitude or, prove it to me. People who were raised, especially in an Asian culture, they were raised to do what they were told. If you can't, then let's just spread the I can't virus so everybody gets it.
On the show today, Dr. Cherie Carter-Scott. She's a bit of a legend. Just to give listeners an idea, I'm fairly experienced in the coaching world. I've been training coaches for 13 or 14 years, probably in the industry for nearly 20 now. And in Europe, that makes me fairly experienced. Well, Cherie's been in coaching since 1974. I believe. So she is a pioneer. I'm going to ask her about the early days of coaching. She's an elder, and I say that with full respect. She's been writing books, best-selling books. She's been on Oprah and various CNN, various kind of media. Yeah, she's a bit of a legend, so I'm quite excited to have her on. So Cherie, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I'm delighted to be here.
They call you the mother of coaching, I heard, right? Which makes sense given that you've been in the field a long time.
That's right. My students said, well, what can we call you? Because you've been around so long, you don't compare to a lot of other coaches or coach trainers who've been around, 5, 10, 15 years. What can we call you? And I said, I don't know. You'll have to come up with a name for me. And they said, what about mother? And I said, well, I do have a daughter. And they said, all right. The mother of coaching. How's that? I said, sounds provocative. I like it.
Why not? Tell us about the early days of coaching. I feel like we're getting past the Wild West era. There's a little bit more professionalism coming in. I coach in various ICF groups, and I see a sort of professionalism coming in. What was it like in the 70s?
Well, in the 70s, there was nothing like coaching. It didn't exist. And I was in San Francisco at the time. And there's a story that goes behind how I ended up creating something that now we all lovingly call coaching, but it didn't exist back then. It just wasn't. So I was the only one, and it was kind of lonely.
Right. I mean, now there's a lot of coaches. Some people say too many, but I question that. I say, look, we all need someone that we can talk to. I'm training coaches at the moment, and I said to them, look, if all you do is show up, listen well, give people a bit of love, ask them a couple of questions about what they want in their
That's a
life,
gift.
most people will benefit from that. Like, that's just helpful for any human being, pretty much, right?
For anyone to give 100% of their attention to another person, to really deeply listen to them, and to really care about what they're saying is in fact a gift, because we live in an extremely distracted world, and most people don't have the attention span to be able to focus for that long.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I have ADHD, and interviewing for me is fantastic practice because it's, I'm here, I'm just trying to pay attention and give people a good stage. What changes have you seen over the years in the coaching industry then, from sort of not existing really to becoming quite
Yeah.
worldwide? I know you're in Thailand today. What changes have you seen?
It's exploded. And what I mean by that is that people saw it, and some people were very discriminating and discounting and saying, well, what can that do for you? I mean, somebody just sitting and listening to you and asking you questions, and they would diminish the value of coaching. There were other people who wanted to jump on the bandwagon because it seemed like a good, quick way to earn fast money. And when I teach coaching with people, I say, if you're in it for the money, it's probably not the most noble reason. And maybe you want to dig a little deeper. And if you really genuinely like helping people, supporting people, helping them overcome challenges, obstacles, even blocks, then you might explore coaching. But if it's just about the money, go into politics probably.
Yeah, I've noticed people can be quite disparaging about coaching, which I've never really understood. I mean, maybe as you say, it's like people can train as a coach relatively quickly. I've seen NLP coach in a weekend, kind of certifications. And I understand why people might not respect the weekend qualification. But most people I know who are coaches, they put years into study. They're lifelong learners. They're, often people train with us as their third or fourth kind of 6-month, year-long course. They've been learning 5, 10 years. So it's like, why do you think people can be disparaging about our field?
I think it's people who have a fixed mindset.
Yeah.
They're not people who are into growth. in any capacity. So, for instance, they think can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Mm.
You can't really change your behaviors. You can't, and there's a whole litany of can'ts that go along with that. And so, if you can't, then let's just spread the I can't virus so everybody gets it.
Yeah, there's sort of negativity there. I know didn't you write a book about negaholics, like people who are addicted to
I did.
negativity? Say
I
what is a
did.
negaholic?
It's a negaholic is a person who's addicted to negativity in thought, word, or behavior. And they like to pull other people down because they don't believe in themselves and they don't believe things can happen. So they spread a lot of, kind of toxic energy that doesn't really contribute, but it's pretty much of a naysayer attitude.
Yeah, I was doing a session with my mentees on meta beliefs yesterday, and one we came across is the world safe? I have people who have come from actually unsafe
Yeah.
places, and am I a good person? These very meta beliefs that are under the conscious surface. And what I said to them is like, if you have these meta beliefs, they'll self-justify. They self-perpetuate through the body. They self-justify,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll try
Mm-hmm.
and drag people into them. People say, no, you don't understand. The world really is unsafe. Or there's a way people perpetuate these beliefs.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, they latched on to something that they thought at some point in time was true. And then they looked unconsciously, perhaps, for evidence for that belief to become the reality. And then they fight for it.
Yeah, they will fight for it. This is the way the life is. You've done loads of media, like various big TV shows. I saw a fairly hostile interview. You handled it beautifully, by the way. I actually said my PA who suggested you, I said, oh, this woman's going to be great. She handled this rude Dutch guy really well. It was 10 years ago now, but how's it been doing all these like Oprah and all these big TV shows? Do you get nervous? Has it been relaxed? You seem pretty calm under pressure.
They're all different. The hosts are all different. Some are as charming as you are. Some are hostile and diminishing, demeaning. It just depends on the show and if that person is a gracious person in their own
Mm.
life. And if they are gracious, they'll probably be that way. But you let a lot of it roll off your back. You don't take it too seriously. I'll give you one little story. I was on a TV show, with the top cable show in America. And they called me and they said, can you take this position if the host takes that position? I said, absolutely, I can. I said, great, it'll be perfect for the show. So I got on the show and I had the position that I believed was the right position and I could fight for it. And I did. I went nose to nose, toe to toe with him. And after the show was over, I thought we were going to be bitter enemies. And he walked up to me, took my hand and said, you were great. Can we do that again sometime? And I was just mildly shocked because I thought we were adversaries, but actually it was all a show.
Right. Like you say X, I say Y. That's the media show, huh? And it's sort of sparring
Yeah,
partners at that level, isn't it? And yeah,
definitely.
when I see interviews with people who are hostile and well informed, I'm kind of okay
Mm-hmm.
with that. It's when I see that they're hostile and just prejudicial about coaching or you or whatever. That's where I get a little like,
Right.
hey,
Right.
come on, at least know what you're attacking here. So.
Yeah.
You wrote a great book on sort of the rules we have for life. So it was like this is the handbook to life, right? And I think the first one was on the body. So this is the Embodiment Coaching podcast. So yeah, could you say a bit about that first rule? You're well ahead of Jordan Peterson on rules for life.
Oh, great. Uh, each one of us is given a body. That's part of the deal of being human. You have to have a body. I mean, there are probably entities flying around that don't have bodies, but we're not actually dealing with those rules. We're just dealing with the rules for being human. And the first one is you will receive a body. You may like it or hate it, but it's yours for the duration of your time on earth. And it's the only relationship, Mark, that we have from birth to death.
Mm. A lot of people's relationship with the body is fairly negative, just to bring that theme back. Obviously I'm dealing
Right?
with embodiment coaching all the time and people are often fairly harsh on themselves. How would you coach someone who said, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I hate my own body? What would be your starting point there?
Well, I would say, do you want to keep that way? Do you want to have that be the rest of your life, or do you want to change it? Because that's a fundamental question. If you've given up, or you have accepted the fact that you hate your body, and it'll never change, then let's not waste time on it. But if you do have just a tiny little bit of an opening to, I'd like it to be different, and I'm willing to do things to experiment with making that different. Then we have a game to play.
Yeah, yeah. So that opening is key in coaching, right? And I've heard you talk about coachability, who's coachable, who's not. I had a Canadian friend messaging me a couple of days ago. Sort of, we're talking about the increasing narcissism of the world. The less
Yes,
we've both found
yes.
coaching students less coachable now than 10 years ago. Say we both had that experience, and I wonder if that's yours, and whether that's to do with people having more knowledge. People used to come in and say, "Hey, what's coaching? I want to learn." Now they come in and like, "Hey, I already know coaching, but teach me," and it's a little harder. There does seem to be an increasing narcissism and uncoachability in the world. Is that your experience, or have I just attracted a bad crowd?
No, it's both, because I do a lot of work with people in China, and I also do a lot of work with people in Europe and in Southeast Asia in general. But a lot of our people come from Asia because we have one of our partners in China who is actively promoting our coach training. And so we have Chinese people calling us and saying, is there space? Is there room? Can I get in to the next one? So that's nice. It's really nice. But a lot of them, as you mentioned, have taken 1, 2, or 3 other coach trainings beforehand. So they have enough information to sound like they know what they're talking about, but they don't necessarily have enough to demonstrate those skills
Right.
in an actual session. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. Can you really, in front of an audience, can you demonstrate the fact that you have the capability, the knowledge, the expertise and experience to be able to support someone going from where they start to where they want to end up? That's the question. So yes, there's some negativity. Yeah, of course, but there's not, there's a more research being done. Like, well, what do you do? And why is it different from other trainings? And how much do you charge? And how long does it take? And
Right.
how fast can I start making a living?
Yes, yes. There's that sort of, and I think there's also people are increasingly customers. Like I was raised in a sort of martial arts background where you were primarily a student. It was a bit like being an apprentice or having a sensei, and you weren't primarily a customer. Of course, you paid your teacher, but he often wasn't that interested in money. And if you couldn't pay, I remember my Aikido teacher,
Right.
a time when I was unemployed, just said, "Hey, keep coming and pay back when you can." And so you weren't primarily a customer. And I wonder if
Right.
orientating as a customer in our consumer culture gets in the way of being a student. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because, as a school that you hold for other people, they are your product and they're also your customer and they're also your student. So they have several different
Mm.
roles, and it depends on how you establish your relationship with them about that has to do with how they respond to you. Like, for instance, when we teach people in Vietnam, it's almost a spiritual experience because they're
Yes.
so grateful. And when we train people in China, um, it's similar to that, but the people in China are mostly executives, and they have that level of gratitude, which, say, in the States, you don't really find that level of gratitude with executives. Uh, but they're different things in different places. I mean, the Netherlands, we've been training in the Netherlands since what,
Yeah.
1990, and so that's a long time.
It's a long time, yeah. I talked to a Vietnamese student yesterday, as it happens. It was a breath of fresh air. It reminded me what I taught in Eastern Europe 10 years ago. There was a sort of hunger. There was like, hey, I want to be one of the first in my country to do this type of thing. And, there was
Yeah,
also that sort of lovely, a little bit of deference. I don't need my ass kissed, but it's nice when people see me as a teacher and not just as a provider. And as you say, we're both, right? It's like different modes. If someone has a customer service complaint, okay, that gets addressed, but it's actually someone else in my company. Let's talk
yeah,
about culture. I sometimes say some of my favorite people are Americans who have traveled. I sometimes find American culture a little culturally blind because a lot of people don't have passports. It's a big country. They might not, it's not like here. I can drive to another country from where I am now within, 2 hours. I can be in 4 countries. I know you've
yep.
lived abroad a lot. So let's talk a little bit about culture and how that impacts coaching.
Well, it does. I'll give you an example. There's this thing, I've been studying the Thai language now for, gosh, about 18 years, on and off. Not every week, but on and off. And there's this thing in Thai, which is called Grang Jai. And Grang Jai, translated into English, is a little bit like saving face.
Hmm.
But more than that, it's not making anybody feel uncomfortable. So, in coaching, we ask questions.
Right.
And if you ask questions in a session, the other person might just be uncomfortable because they're stretching out of their comfort
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah.
And so the key here has to do with acknowledging Grangjai and saying, during our time together today, I want us to put Grangjai on the side, and I want us to be able to feel free to be able to ask and respond. If I say anything that offends you, please speak up and let me know, because I don't intend to. But I really want to support you in getting to the essence of what it is that you want to overcome today.
You mentioned the Dutch. I've worked in the Netherlands a lot. Amsterdam is one of my favorite open-minded cities to teach. I've also worked outside of Amsterdam, which I find much more conservative. That surprised me, having worked there a lot.
True.
How do you find the Dutch in terms of coaching, coachability?
I find the Dutch to be some of the most open people in the world. I mean, really open, ready, willing, able. Let's do it. Let's get to it. And it's been a wonderful experience because I found that the Dutch are much more open than the Americans, for
Oh,
instance.
really?
A lot more open. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot more open than the French.
Oh, God, yes.
And
God, yes.
What's interesting about it is that they don't show up with a show me attitude or, prove it to me. They show up with, these are my goals and objectives. These are the things I want to
Yeah.
tackle and accomplish. Can I work in Dutch? Can I work in English? Can I work in, any like, and we're really there to accommodate them. We have a licensee of ours who has worked with us for many, many years called Oak Tree Me. And they're in the south of Holland in the Eindhoven area.
Mm.
And they use our work, our transformational executive coach certification program, to promote, produce, and present the courses to their audience. Now, it's not just a Dutch audience, they come from all over, but a lot of the Benelux countries combine their skills there and go on these experiences with them. As a matter of fact, you probably know this, but in Holland, they have these things called conference centers, which we don't really have many of those in the States if we have any. But they have them and they're separate from hotels,
Hmm.
whereas a hotel is a hotel. And a conference center is where people really go there to learn.
Yeah.
And they're not as fancy as 4 and 5 star hotels, but they have the environment, the feeling that you're here to learn, we're here to teach you or to help you or to encourage your growth, a little like a human greenhouse.
Yeah, and I've also enjoyed working in the Netherlands quite a lot. I find the Dutch sort of pragmatically coachable. If you give them something useful, they're no bullshit, they're fine. How do you think, having had a bit of distance from it, how do you think American culture has influenced coaching? So coaching, like a lot of trends, starts in the States. I love the can-do-ness of Americans, and I also sometimes there's a naivety there, or there's a certain other things I admire less. How do you think American culture has influenced the whole field of coaching? Because one thing I'll hear is, "Oh, it's very American what you're doing." People will say to me sometimes.
Well, they do, and it's true because coaching is American. I mean, not everything about it, but the idea of personal development and growing yourself and making things in your own life better is a concept that I think stemmed organically from America. Nowadays, people are in a different mindset because things are changing rapidly in America and they don't know if they're going to have a place to stand in the future. There's just too much uncertainty. So what we coach in with people in the US is how to be able to survive and thrive in an uncertain world that you can't find a lot of predictability. And that in and of itself is an important coaching conversation.
Yeah, so we had this sort of post-war piece that you grew up in. I grew up in the second part of it, I grew up in the 80s. And there was this sort of idea of there was a certain stability in the world. Sort of it was that liberalism was taking us all to the Star Trek world where everything was perfect. And then a couple of things happened, like this sort of culture seems to have entered some period of decadence. The economies up and down. My generation, for example, the younger generation of in the UK are the first generation that aren't richer than their parents in quite a while. This
Mm-hmm.
is sort of increasing uncertainty. Mass migration has made a lot of countries way more culturally unstable, let's say. And there's this feeling, particularly amongst young people, of life is getting harder. And the sort of easy time the boomers have is there's a lot of jokes about boomers amongst young people. It's like, oh, you bought your house for a packet of crisps. You don't know about hard work, you know? And it's, yeah, what is it like coaching in that environment? Like now, this is, as you say, a
Oh,
trend for all of us.
well, that's a big question because a lot of our students in our courses have kids that are that age group, somewhere between 16 and 25. And they have a kind of a view of the world of hopelessness. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Boomer.
had a chemistry session with a young man of 16 years old yesterday, and he's the son of a mother who's trying to motivate him to do his studies. Well, I mentioned to her that perhaps what he was interested in is different than what she thinks he should be interested
Yes.
in. And we started a conversation about that. And she said, oh, would you coach him? Would you please? I said, I'll have a chemistry session with him and see if we click. If he likes me, if I like him, and if we want to work together, we'll see. And this young man, I don't find fault with him at all. But like many young people, he's addicted to his smartphone. And he could not have a conversation with me for 30 minutes without picking up his phone and looking at it.
Mm.
And I'd say to him, what is it that you're interested in? I don't know. Well, what is it that appeals to you? I don't know. I mean, it was pretty much his mantra was, I don't
I
know,
don't
I
know.
don't know, I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. That's
And
tough.
so at a certain point, I had to say to him, if you could spend your time any way at all, what would you be spending your time doing? This is a little bit of a different tilt to the
Yeah.
question. But then he started basically to open up a little bit. And when I shared about myself and being interested in something that wasn't necessarily rubber stamped by my parents or my peer
Hmm.
group, that let him open up a little bit more. And he said, you know, can I really tell you what I like? I said, that'd be great. So in our chemistry session, we did just a little bit of coaching. And he found in that conversation something because I got off with him and I said, look, if you want to talk to me again, let your mom know. And if you don't, it's perfectly okay. There's no force, no pressure here at all. So he got off and his mom texted me about 20 minutes later and she said, he loved his conversation with you and he wants to talk again. I was shocked because I thought he was going to say, I talked to this old bag today, and she had nothing good to say, and I'm sure she wants to just talk me into being the way my mother wants me to be. But he wasn't at all. He was different, and we'll see if he calls, and we'll see if he writes. But it was one of those moments that surprised me. Actually, did.
Yeah, no, that I can relate to that. I took some young guys to the gym and coached them in the gym because it gave them something to do, and they needed because they're so distractible unless you give them something to do while coaching it.
Yeah.
And even then, they would get their phone out between sets. And one kid said the most impactful thing I did was ask him not to be on his phone for 40 minutes, and I was like, wow, okay, because I was like, hey, can you put? Let's
Yeah.
just ask them, hey, can you put your phone away while we're working together? And
Yeah.
they're not wrong in some ways. They can be a bit doomer and hopeless, but they're not wrong that university, for example, isn't a ticket to success anymore. There's a huge overproduction of, university elites, and they're not wrong that there are some difficulties they face. And mental health seems to be pretty poor amongst them as well, like
So
neurologically because of various factors. So how do I coach someone who's maybe anxious? How do I coach someone who's maybe a bit depressed? Like you say, they haven't got that
yeah.
American positivity. That it's not the same positivity as I expect to find in a executive or the people who study personal growth.
Yes, it's absolutely true. I saw a podcast that Oprah did the other day with a man who was talking about I don't know if it was the anxious generation, but there's a book about how technology has taken its toll
Yeah.
on this generation and how they're suffering as a result of it, right down to 2-year-old kids whose parents put them right in front of an iPad and they sit there with the babysitter iPad and they get addicted at 2 years old. So that was very interesting to me. But the other thing that's really interesting is that a friend and colleague of mine in Israel, she's been through this whole Gaza, Israel, Hamas, Palestinian thing, and I've been, talking to her, coaching her, listening to her, for the last year or so. And what she said to me is that she now is teaching people how to coach through trauma, to coach through panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and how to be able to work with people who are genuinely suffering from the noise of bombs, shellings. And I thought it was really fascinating because she's an MCC coach and she's gravitating more towards the people who are in war zones than the people who are executives in offices.
Yeah, I was on the phone to Ukraine yesterday, which is pretty typical for me. I run a charity there, and it's a little difficult. Sometimes I have a client in California with a very first world problem, and God love them, it's a problem to them, you know. And then I'm on the phone to Ukraine, and I'm literally hearing artillery in the background of the call.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's that's a little difficult as a coach. I have to sort of switch modes, and normally, in some ways, it's a matter of one, not dysregulating myself with too many calls like that. I found I have a limit in terms of my wellness, in
yeah,
terms of how many calls I want to
yeah,
take to Israel or Ukraine. The other one is being able to shift modes and kind of reopen up compassion for I have a client who has the problem of having a very, very rich husband and finding it difficult to find life purpose because they have no financial motivation. And I'm like,
right.
I can help her, but I have to switch.
Exactly. It's a totally different context. And that's where you have to really hear where they're coming from, what they need, what they want in the moment, and be able to switch gears quickly, which I suspect you're pretty great at.
Switching I can do. Yeah, yeah. I have a few modes, a few set modes. Let's talk about life purpose. I think we're both interested in this topic. I've coached lots of people on finding life purpose. It's one of the things I love. You know, it's at the heart of coaching, right? It's like you were saying to this young man, if you could do anything with your time, what would you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been on purpose for the last 20 years, which has made a huge difference to my happiness. I love giving that to others, helping others find that. What's your starting point with helping people find purpose? Someone comes to you, they say, I'm a bit lost. What do I do in my life? What's your starting point?
Well, I usually say to them, let's talk about when you feel like you're yourself, your best self. Things that you've done, things you've accomplished, moments when you feel like, yeah, that's me. Let's talk about those things and maybe give me an example and take me through the story about when you felt the best about you. That's a starting point. It's not always the
Mm-hmm.
same starting point. I mean, sometimes there are other ones as well, but I, I have a good story myself of how I found my life purpose. And sometimes I'll share that with people and that'll open up a door as well because they'll say, oh, well, if you found your life purpose at 24 years old, maybe I can find mine too. And so then we have something in common and they are looking for some, whether it's a duck to drop out of the sky or a burning bush or something, it's supposed to show up in one of those transformer costumes and say, hi, I'm your life purpose. And it doesn't happen that way, as
No.
you know very well. We have to be able to find, what's in their head, what's in their heart, what's in their gut. Where is there a synthesis about all that? And if we coach them about whatever they've done in their life up until that point, that gave them a good feeling, satisfaction,
Yeah.
fulfillment, a sense of belonging. That's a starting point to go into. If you could, what would you? And then starting to see how would you like to spend your days? What does that look like? And if you get up in the morning, take me through a perfect day for you. It's not a holiday.
Right, right,
It's
right.
an
Yeah, after
actual
you've been on holiday
productive
for a
day.
week, right? You've had a week off on the
Yes,
beach. Now, what do you do? Like, what do you do after maybe it's
exactly.
a month off if they've got burnout, but okay, after 3 months on the beach, eventually you want to do something, right? So you've got sort of what I call
Yes.
bright spot questions there, what's the best part of your day? And then you've got like magic one questions, like, okay, if I could make
Yeah.
magic one, how would your ideal day look like, or how would you spend your time? Any other sort of major approaches you have? I mean, they're brilliant already for a start, but I'm curious.
I usually use the past as a reference point. Who do you emulate? Who do you admire? Who are your role
Hmm.
models?
Hmm.
Who are the people that you say, oh, I'd like to grow up and be like that person? Oh, I'd like to do this. Oh, that looks really cool to me. Or that looks really interesting. I mean, I'm looking for a little spark of joy. So
Hmm.
one time another mother brought me her adult child, out of college, did very well in college and was working at an architectural firm because it's what she majored in. And she found out she didn't like it. She didn't like architecture. It was boring. She wasn't happy. She wasn't stimulated. I asked her every question that you and I could probably come up with. And it was an I don't know over and over and over again. And finally I said to her, when was the last time you had fun?
Mm.
She said, fun? I said, fun, actual fun. She thought with this long moment of silence. And all of a sudden she went, I remember it was my friend's house and she was having a party and I was in the kitchen making lasagna. and I had the ricotta cheese, and I had the strips of pasta, and I had and all of a sudden I said, well, wait a moment, you just got very animated. And
Hmm.
she said, I did? I said, yes, you were saying, I don't know for a long time. And all of a sudden you talked about lasagna and you got happy. She said, you're not suggesting I become a chef. I said, actually, I'm not suggesting anything like that. I just noticed it. And she said,
Yeah, yeah.
my mother would kill me.
So there's a side, yeah. And I noticed when I was talking about purpose, I kind of had an energy and animation to me like about 5 minutes ago. And that's what I, encourage
Yeah.
people to notice I call it the body radar. Like, hey, what animates you? What gives you that feeling alive? What gets you up in the morning? What could you do unpaid for 10 hours and not mind? There's tuning into that animation of the body is really key, huh?
Yeah. It's so important to get the sizzle factors, which is what I usually call it. I like your body radar, though. I think that's lovely. But the sizzle factor is the thing that they would do if they didn't get paid.
Yes.
And they would love to do it. And they do it because it resonates so deeply and so profoundly within them that they have to do it. And it doesn't really matter about the money. I'm sure that's true for you with your podcast
Oh, yeah.
as well as training coaches.
Podcast is supposed to be a sort of marketing thing, but really it's just because I like learning and I get to speak to cool people. So it's like my marketing team is like, is it a good use of your time? I'm like, I don't care. Some people come to our courses for it, but I do it, irrespective of that. I guess
Yeah,
the other thing with purpose is it's not just something people work out cognitively, right? Like I say to people,
right.
there's some work in the work. You need to do some experiments, I call them. You need to do some work. I was talking to someone at lunch a few days ago. I said, look, just do 3 workshops for 90 minutes on these 3 different topics, and see which one you love. And it's like, can you organize 3? She's like, yeah, but I want to work it out first. I'm like, I think we work things out in the world as much as we work things out in our heads.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of thinking going on, all that cognition of, how's it going to be, what's going to happen. And I say to people, you use the David Kolb approach, which is you jump in and do something. Then after you do it, then you reflect on it. And you reflect on what it did for you, what you learned, what you're taking away from that experience, and how you grew from it. And that's really an important thing, the experiential model. And so people say, you mean I'm supposed to do something that I'm not good at? I said, uh-huh. You're supposed to experiment, and I love your word, I use it all the time, experiment with behaviors that you're not good at, and to find out, are you going to be nice to yourself anyway? Are you going to learn from that experiment? Are you going to take that and use it as something that feeds your spirit? Well, let's see.
Yeah, yeah. Purpose is a big one. I found boundaries a lot. I do a lot of coaching on boundaries now, people pleasing. I got asked by a company yesterday to do work with their executives on people pleasing, which really surprised me in that sort of executive context. And then I guess like self-care would be another one, sometimes confidence. What are
Yes.
some of the main asks you find these days?
Similar, very similar. Boundaries is always a big one. People who were raised, especially in an Asian culture,
Yeah.
they were raised to do what they were told. And if they're good children, they do what they're told and they do it very responsibly. But the thing is that we don't necessarily want leaders who are just going to do what they're told. Those are called followers.
Right.
We want people who are innovative and who think of creative ways to make solutions happen for themselves and for others and maybe even the planet. So I think it's really important for people to be able to find themselves because so often we are doing sessions with people who don't know themselves, don't like themselves, don't really have any motivation to do anything positive for themselves. And that's where the coach comes in to help them find themselves in the midst of this distracting world.
Mm-hmm. So you see, I've worked with military and a little bit of consultation for special forces, and they almost did the opposite things. Like mainstream military is like we want people who can be told what to do, and if you work with the special forces guys, they're like, oh no, we want people who don't get told what to do. Like if you there's a documentary at the moment on the SAS, for example. People can find this as a series about them in World War II, and they took all the crazy guys to join the SAS who couldn't be told what to do because they needed the creative people, and it strikes me that more and more people in the workplace is more like the special forces ethos now. It's not like job for life, do as you're told. It's like this young man. It's much more like entrepreneurial, make a YouTube channel, start a podcast. You need that more like special forces, don't do as you're told, be creative thinking style.
Exactly. And that's really important to be able to differentiate between Are you a person who wants to be told what to do, like the 16-year-old was? Or are you a person who doesn't want to be told what to do and has that creative energy that you want to put to use, whether it's in designing codes for the latest game that you're going to submit or whatever? I mean, we have a final report that people do when they graduate, and it's really a document for them to document their journey in the coaching process and their learning. And we have people who do videos and some that do PowerPoints and some that do mind maps all over the place. This one guy, 24 years old, was a gamer, and he designed a game as his final report.
Nice. Nice. That
Yeah.
is great. I would give past him just for the effort and creativity. Let's talk about coach training, because some people listening to this are already coaches, but there's
Okay.
probably a bunch who are curious about coach training. You run a very well respected, very established coach training. Rather than just sort of plug your training or my training, let's talk general principles. What should people be looking for? Because there's a lot of options out there. And I think it's just one of the
Yeah.
ways to make money for coaches, to start a coach training, right? It's not always motivated by the right things. And there's almost like a pyramid scheme in some places, I think, with, pushing out coach trainers who become coach trainers. But so what should people be looking for to choose from all the coach
I,
trainings out there?
I think number one is you want to look for an organization that has some legs and find out who would speak positively about it and what would they say. Because I think what people who are graduates of that program would say about the program is important for people to learn. What's the rapport like? What is the structure like? How difficult is it for somebody, say, with ADHD to be able to take the program and to be able to work with the program? Or is it more exclusive to people who have a very high IQ? What is going to be the magic yes for someone to sign up and say, this is the place for me? I know it is. And why? What makes it that way? I think those are really important questions.
Do you have a sense of how long a good coach training should be? I mean, we used to do 9 months. Now we've got it down to 6 months because the people didn't want to. We lost people in summer, we found, and there was this demand, and it's pretty intensive. We do like maybe 6 to 7 hours a week, which is as much as we found we can ask people who have kids and jobs to do. So sort of we try to
Yeah.
say, what's the maximum we can reasonably ask people to do who are already employed? And that's a stretch.
Yeah,
That's a stretch. So
it
yeah,
is.
do you have a sense
Well, it's
of a good length for a coach training?
uh, things changed with COVID for us. They dramatically changed because up until then we were hopping around the globe 200,000 miles a year, going from hub to hub to hub, training coaches in different places. COVID hit,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden that was called, no, we're going to be online on whatever platform.
sure.
And so we had to redesign everything for the platform. And when that happened, we designed our modules in 3 hours and 15 minutes, 15-minute break in the middle after 90 minutes, and 2 days, one personal day, one weekend day. So, people complain, I can't take the time off my job, and other people complain, I can't take the time away from my
Right.
family, I can't do evenings, I'm too tired, and it's like there's always a reason. So that's what we do, we split the difference. One half a day from the personal and one half a day from the professional. And people really like that. And if they miss one, they can go back and they can look at the video, and then they have to write a one-page report about it. So it satisfies a lot of needs. We couldn't do that in person with the
Right.
setup that we had. And so this is a lot more forgiving and kind to people who have to travel, who have sick children, parents, relatives. I mean, we just had recently an earthquake in Bangkok. Oh
Okay.
my goodness. So, things happen, and we take that into consideration, and we let people know we're here to support you. And we'll do that in any way we can, but you have to come halfway with us.
Yeah, it's tricky. We used to do a lot of in-person stuff. I used to do like 5 intensives 5 times a year, and it was last about 9 months. I did that in UK and Russia. And the problem was people get overwhelmed. If it's a 5-day intensive, by day 3, people are just full, even if we're really helping them chat and walk and process in different ways, move and dance. People would still just get emotionally overwhelmed, and they're not really taking in information on day 4. And then you couldn't make
Yeah.
them too long because people need time away. So the internet allows a sort of titration of learning. Like we give an hour of really intense learning every
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, and then like 15 minutes to chat and process afterwards. And that's about enough for people on a weekly basis of, an hour every week. But the problem with that is, particularly from an embodiment coaching, they don't necessarily have the depth of embodied experience of what it's like to be in this. Like, I remember doing coaching intensive, say, for Newfield, and you're really in the sort of coaching soup being cooked for a few days on end. I remember that. And I encourage people to come to our live events. But since COVID, people don't want to travel. It's hard to get people to leave their houses now, I found.
It's more challenging than it used to be. People would willingly do it in the past, and now they're a little more reticent, holding back a little more. They don't know if they can trust the environments, etc. Um, I know we did a program for the Air National Guard in the U.S., and in those days, it used to be one time a week that people would come together, and then they'd go back to their lives. And they said to us, the person who was hiring us, we're flying people in from all over the country, and we'd like to have the 1 week intensive followed by, maybe a month off, another week intensive. And so I said, well, let me go back to the drawing boards and let me see what I can put together, because maybe we can just accommodate your needs
Yeah.
with these people. That's what we did. We accommodated their needs, and it was so much fun to work with them. Some were believers and some were really not believers, but by the end of the training, they all had come around to being more human than robotic and being more
Okay.
human than the military had trained them.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the human thing. I mean, if we're not in the human business, what business are we in? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of things to look for then, so it's like some experience, some reasonable length. I'd say some kind of assessment, like you said, a final project. We have a video
yeah,
exam. Because if there's not a standard, like it's just paying for a piece of paper, right? If there's not some kind of
right,
coursework, I would say. So there's some kind of, hey, it's not just that you show up on Zoom and watch TV. There's something that you need
right.
to go away and practice. You alluded to this earlier, that there's a big difference between knowing about something and learning a skill. Like, you talk about some
Yeah,
of the Chinese students. They might know about something. They've read the books. It's so easy to go on YouTube and listen to whatever Peter Levine talk about trauma. That's very different than learning trauma related skills. Any
right.
thoughts on sort of that difference in learning?
Well, you know that I started coaching in 74 and very soon after started training coaches because they kept saying to me, can you teach me to do what you're doing? And I said, I'm not sure. And let's figure out what I am doing and let's see if we can put it into a curriculum. So that was actually the beginning. But then it was 21 years later that ICF came into existence, 95. And when it did come into existence, I was, to tell the truth, I was a little arrogant. I've been doing this for 21 years. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm about. And I had to find the humility to be able to learn again from this organization that was really market focused and driven, and that maybe I could learn something from. And so it was in 2013, I think, that my mentor from Geneva said to me, you really need to seriously consider ICF. And I was, I've been
Yeah,
there,
I
done
had the same
that.
response. Yeah.
I guess just the same. I mean, and she said, do you trust me? I said, of course I trust you. And she said, well, I just want to tell you, I think it's important and I think you should seriously consider it. I went back to the drawing boards and I said to my associates, I think we have to look into this ICF thing. I mean, it's happening more and more that when people come to us, especially in Holland, when they come to us, they say, I want to find out about your training. We tell them about it and they say, oh, I love it. It's really exciting. I want to do it. Is it ICF?
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
said,
we have that.
no, I can't do it. My boss won't let me. So I became ICF certified and the organization became accredited.
Yeah.
And I think that credential has meant a lot for us over the years in terms of people saying, well, you've got the credential that for my company to pay for it, I need to have that as part of the deal. And so, I got over my arrogance and learned a little about humility, which was great. And so I think that's important, especially in the Chinese world that we work in and also here in Thailand.
Interesting. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about ICF. We sort of jump through a lot of hoops every year to get ICF PCCs and credits, as it were. We do the continuing education credits, is it CCEs? There's a lot of hoops to jump through, but I get invited to a lot of really nice ICF groups. Various groups I talk with ICF online on Zoom calls, and they're always friendly. And it feels like nothing a great place for coaches to meet other coaches. So. Good. You have a book coming out about your life. Tell us a little bit about the book. I want to hear more about your life.
Okay, well, My oldest male friend in the world since I was a teenager suddenly died 2 years ago. Just suddenly. So there were complications with his aorta and he just died. And it was very shocking to everybody who knew him. And it stayed with me. And then last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary of training coaches
Wow.
on March 1st in Thailand. We had 100 people come from 16 different countries to celebrate the Big 50. I never thought that I would live this long in any case. But all of a sudden, I started saying, maybe it's time to write, the bridge, because I did write the rules for being human back in 74, and it was in our very first coach training as a piece of paper with the 10 rules written on it. And people passed it on to friends and passed it on and on. And then somebody put it on the internet saying this is for ancient Sanskrit, etc. It's not. But what happened was I really, 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 what was I saying? Help me, Mark. What was I
You're
saying
saying about your
a minute
life and
ago?
people coming together in Thailand for the 50th
Yeah.
anniversary and your friend passing on.
So I said to my husband, my dear husband, I said, do you think it's time that I started writing the bridge between my life and the 10 rules for being human and how that's influenced me and how I made those choices and decisions? He said, do it, honey. Just do it. Sit down and do it. So I did it. I sat down and I started writing from the very beginning, from birth. And some of the challenges and some of the tragedies and some of the breakthroughs and some of the breakdowns, but always looking at it from the context of what coaching is and how we can grow if we're willing to not be a victim of our circumstances.
Right. You have this idea of life will teach us lessons. And I think I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it's a nice frame, certainly a helpful frame. And this idea of like you keep being offered the lessons until you learn them. Like, let's say that's mythologically true. I'm not sure if it's on another level true, but certainly there's a mythological truth to that. That it seems to me that I'll just keep getting hit round the head at increasingly hard blows until I get the lesson I'm offered. So I'm guessing there's a bunch of, you're like, come on, Mark, wake up. Have you got it yet? I feel like God is generous. I usually get a few warning shots before I get a few slaps to the head, and I ignore the warning shots. I'm a slow learner, like as someone who teaches
Yeah,
coaching,
me too.
surprisingly. But yeah, say a little
Yeah.
bit about that. Like I imagine there's a lot of stories in your book about learning the lessons life is gently or less gently
Oh,
offering.
yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of pictures in the book also. Pictures of people, places, things, and, my reaction to things. I tried to focus in on just the defining moments in my life when it was defining who I was
Mm-hmm.
in terms of my choices or decisions or what I did with the situation. When our house burned down when I was 12 years old, when my ex-husband walked out on me and left me a note saying, I've left and I'm not coming back. How to cope with a situation that you never expected, that you never wanted, and that hits you right over the head. And you think, oh my God, nothing prepared me for this moment. Here I am, and I don't know how to deal with this. So the defining moments, I think, are really, really important. And so if somebody reads my book, which has happened, and they say, I loved your book, now I want to write my book, I say, focus on those moments in your life that have made you who you are today.
Nice. Yeah, I just
And,
wrote a
and
book.
then start writing.
Just wrote a book on life purpose for young men. I include 5 stories of my life in there, and they're all sort of defining moments. Some of tragedy, some of choice points, some of moments
Yeah.
of sort of purpose and rightness where there was a fit. And someone said to me, "Why are there not 50 stories in there?" I was like, "Because I haven't had that many moments like that." But those ones were really important to me, and I feel like people
Yeah.
learn from story and narrative as much from education and coaching and other things, right?
Yeah, exactly. I also talk about my very first coach, and I'll even show you a picture of my very first coach.
Okay, so people on YouTube, is it was I can't quite say it's a cat. What is it?
It's a
It's
horse.
a horse. Oh yeah, now I see. Oh yeah, I wasn't seeing from now. Okay, it's a horse. Beautiful horse.
Yeah. My very first coach. And when people didn't understand me and I couldn't get through to them, I would go out and talk to my horse. And she was a great listener. She never disagreed with me. And she was completely judgment free. And I established a really great relationship with her. And she would always be there for me whenever I came to see her.
Wonderful. Yeah, and horses are certainly sensitive somatically as well. So there's how much of it is just co-regulation. How much of what we do is just that, not even human, but mammalian because dogs do it, horses do it, a lot of animals do it. There's that how
Yeah.
much what we do is just connecting, just presence. It seems like that's so
Yeah.
much of it. Mm.
It's a lot of it. But I think one of the things that people forget is that when we restate or summarize back to the client what we've heard, it helps them to hear their words from another voice. It helps them. Did I say that? Did I really say that? It helps them. If you want to change it, it's fine with me, but this is what I believe I heard you say. Is that true for you?
Nice.
I think that's helpful to people.
Yeah. Well, you're in your 70s. Well, I don't want to be rude to say, but I think it's clear for listeners. You're sprightly. I'm definitely going to tell my girlfriend, like, hey, I hope you look like this in your 70s. This woman I interviewed today. I don't want to be too
So
charming, but
sweet.
for sure, you've got a lot of energy. So what do you still want to do? What still remains for you?
Oh gosh, what a great question. Every day I get another opportunity. And, we're going to go back to China and we're going to go to Shanghai and we're going to train some more over there. And that's for sure. And this year, I've just received a request from Vietnam to be able to do a special program for PepsiCo. And, they keep coming in every day. There's a little something. I love it. I love training people. I love coaching people. And I love making the world a little happier, one soul at a time.
Nice. Cherie, this has been a pleasure. A really nice start to my day. Where do people find you online, both the coaching course and the book?
If they go to Dr. Cherie, my first name, CHERIE.com, drcherie.com, they'll find me and they'll have a link to our coach training and also to my books.
Nice.
That easy.
Nice. What are we saying Thai? Is it sawadi crap? Something like that in Thai? What do we say?
That's very good. That's hello and goodbye, but you're saying it from a man's perspective, sawadee crap. But from a woman's perspective, I would say sawadee ka.
Ah, okay. All right. I wondered. I hear that back in, I study Thai Buddhism sometimes. So I meet Thai people there. Wonderful. Cherie, this has been a total
Yeah.
pleasure. Thank you for joining us.